is Monica Perez, and I am here today with an extraordinary researcher, and I'm going to say deep historian. Someone you may actually have come across his work because he has a really robust Twitter following and lots of other avenues. Seven C's, the number seven, SEES. Hello, and thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Monica, and I appreciate that intro. I've never called myself those things, but if other people are doing it, hey, I'll take
It's
it.
true. It's true. I mean, the things that, first of all, you're unique in that the way you connect the networks of people is very telling. And it's you kind of have to slow down and really look at it to absorb the impact of just what we're talking about when we talk about the connections across people and
Hmm.
companies and industries and institutions, the government, academia, big tech, defense, and it's you can say everyone's connected
Yeah.
from everybody else through 6 degrees of separation, but this is one. This
Hmm.
is like that guy was at his wedding.
Yeah.
Like that's something very different. And yes, you might not know what they're saying, but there's a famous expression when a bunch of guys in the same industry get together, it's not for a wedding.
Oh yeah. When interests converge.
Yes, I'm paraphrasing, but so how I want to do this, I mean, this isn't what you cover is not a one show topic. Like your overviews take a whole show.
Hmm.
So and I don't want to spring on you, but I'm hoping that you can give us an overview of whatever area you want to, and then let us dig in. So I've always been interested in the backstory of Thiel and Musk and the connection between defense and big tech. I've read this book, which Surveillance Valley. I'm sure you've seen it, The Secret Military History of the Internet.
Hmm.
And of course, as soon as the guys like Edward Snowden, my hero, I'm like, you are obviously a limited hangout. However, a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
So that was very fascinating to me. And I think you touch on a lot of things that are in there. And we can talk about other things too, but first tell us about yourself to the extent that you can without doxing yourself. Like, what got you interested in this? What made you kind of go down this road of technique and everything? I want to know what keeps you going. I want to know if you have a day job, if it's relevant to this. Like, are you uniquely suited to this? Like, tell us all about yourself, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty.
You got it. So it all starts with my childhood.
I was
I
born
Yeah, no.
poor curly haired baby.
So I always had like an issue with authority. My parents trying to tell me what to do, teachers, like I'd always ask, like why, and I always hated the because I said so or because I know better, right? And so I think there's something biologically ingrained in me that is like just naturally resistant to authority. Um, and that sort of careened into like my career path where it seemed like anytime I was working at a company, I would come across something that wasn't right by the customer or some shady business practice or how we were doing something incorrectly that could be done differently or better. And I always sort of talked myself into a hole I couldn't dig myself out of. And that was like working at a grocery store, doing construction. I sort of bounced around in my 20s from just doing different odd jobs, just trying to make ends meet. But I was always like, I guess, politically aware. I think Zeitgeist, that film, like when it came out when I was in high
Really?
school, that was
As
like,
soon as that became like it was popular, it's like, oh, well, it's got to be a limited hangout. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of what sparked it of like, oh well, if the government can be involved in this giant terrorist attack at least to some capacity, what else could they possibly, and that's what sort of got me down like the digging and the rabbit holes and things like that. I had never been a huge fan of, like the Clintons, for an example. I remember my earliest memory of politics, I guess, would be Hillary Clinton was trying to ban Grand Theft Auto when I was like 9. And that's when I took
Was
like
it Hillary that wasn't Tipper Gore?
it was probably both of them. I
Yeah,
just
right.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, there were like headlines where she was calling for like a violent video game ban. And I was like, well, I don't have it. I'm 9. All I
Yeah.
know my politics are, I don't like this
Oh,
lady.
that's right. Yeah.
And it wasn't until during my 20s, I sort of bounced around, and as like the trying to live life, pay bills, things like that, it sort of fell to the wayside a little bit. But I had known about things like the Federal Reserve, the Rothschild banking industry, and stuff. Um, it was COVID that kind of like brought everything back to the forefront. I think that was kind of the case for a lot of people, where just something didn't feel right, especially in like the collusion that I was seeing, where countries that are supposed to be at each other's throats are
Uh-huh.
all complying under the same sort of orders and stuff.
They still
Um,
just gloss over that. I'm like, okay, we were shoulder to shoulder with China and all the COVID stuff, and now China bad, and before China
yeah.
bad. It's like I don't know, man.
Exactly, and you try to bring that up, and people will, like you said, just brush it aside. And I think, if anything, that is just like a true testament to show that, like, when shit hits the fan, they will work together and
There is a world
cooperate.
government.
Exactly,
Make
E-
no mistake.
exactly. And so just like with everything that had happened, I sort of struggled to find like my place back in like the private sector. So I started live streaming. I used to play video games a ton, and I was doing like a live streaming gaming thing. And about a year into it, I said, what if I start incorporating like some of my political, views and things like that. That ended up catching on with the audience that I had at the time, and then the Butler assassination thing happened.
Oh, that was it? That
Yeah.
short a while ago. I'm going to let you finish, but I want to just interject that
Mhm.
that's a very I ask people how they get into this stuff, mostly to vet them. And so I'm going to tell you something that's going to totally blow up my ability to vet people, because I'm going to tell you the things that have been valid in my experience. When it was just podcasting, before video was easy, a lot of people, libertarians, were musicians.
Mhm.
So they had all the equipment, they had good mics and stuff. They could figure out how to do that. Then I asked Johnny Vedmore where he got all his stuff, and he said, I think he said something like during the Napster era, you
Oh
could like
wow.
reach into other people's stuff, and he just learned how to get good at like deeper research. I was like, that's that sounds good. That's
Yeah.
plausible. But I hadn't thought about the gamer thing, the live streaming gamer thing for the video era.
Mhm.
And so that's it. Now I've just ruined it, because anyone who is actually a plant is going to be like, oh, I was just a video game streamer.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you got the first bite at that apple, and it seems valid.
All
So keep
right.
going. So
Um.
so the Butler thing was a turning point for you, like
Mhm.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Gosh, that should be July 13th, 2023 should be a national holiday. It should be, like the people should really it should be in the annals of American history as
Yep.
something really significant. I mean, our president got his ear blown off by a giant bullet, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
so close, just it must have been like a molecule of that
Yeah.
bullet.
Act of God, they say.
Yeah, like actually, like it's like it defies the laws of physics, and looks a lot like the Tony Soprano head attempted assassination. If you ever go back to The Sopranos, in one
Mhm.
episode he's got a big bandage on his ear. So because they like to tap into archetypes, I think, to like
Yeah.
pathways that are already carved. But yes, so and I'll tell you, not too many people like that. I literally have a tweet from that day, like within 1 second, being like, okay, I have the side by side Iwo Jima picture, knowing
Mhm.
people are going to be super mad at me, but it was so ridiculous. And now I
Yeah.
think they're allowed to know it's ridiculous, because like Sal the Agorist, I think, sent out a I don't know how he got it, but like the video of the back
Mhm.
scene where they're staging the photo. I
Yep.
actually thought they probably took the photo the day before. You know what I mean? Like, you get your wedding
Yeah.
picture, like some brides will go the day before, put all their shit on and go the day before. But no, it looks like they just did it right then and there. So, but you were onto it immediately, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, it was obviously like something that kind of took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. I didn't know what to think initially. Obviously, I was naturally skeptical. But it was what happened like a couple days. I think it was either the day after or a couple days after. He taps this guy named JD Vance as his vice president.
Yes.
And I was like, I've never heard of this guy
Yeah.
before. Let me look into him. And from there is where I discovered who Peter Thiel was for the first time.
I have to say, I'm going to try not to interrupt you constantly, but
You're good.
here's the thing is that I did the same thing. I was like, who the hell's JD Vance? And then
Mm-hmm.
I read it and no shot at you that you didn't catch that being fake right away. Like I didn't know 9/11 was an inside job until the Boston Marathon bombing. Like it took years for me to really be like, oh, like not everything isn't fake. I mean, people do die and get hurt and stuff, but everything's fake.
Yeah.
So I looked into the JD Vance thing too, and some thoughtful tweet sent me, I guess it was a Vanity Fair article, and it just like cascades through all this bullshit. And I'm like, so this guy goes to Yale, meets Thiel, somebody like gives him a fucking job, which just I got a JD MBA from Stanford. I would love to have gotten a job like that. Unfucking believable. I was a banker, like I'm a chick. I just should have gotten a job like that. And definitely not happening. Not happening. So he gets that for no reason at all. One of his professors suggests he writes a book, which just shoots to the top. Ron Howard makes a movie out of it. He shows that Thiel's like, oh, you know what? You're so great at a job you don't show up at. I'm going to give you $100 million. And you just go to it. And I'm like, okay, this is fake.
Yeah.
And it all started when I think it all started when he joined the Marines.
Yeah.
Because they give you tests. They give you personality tests.
Okay.
And I was
makes
like,
sense.
oh, he's a smart psychopath. Like to the point where I think they told him who to marry.
I wouldn't doubt it for a second because, when you look at obviously his wife and some of the things going on with like the H-1B program, I think there is something bigger at play there.
Arguably the most important country in the world. It's the purple country.
Yeah.
Right. It's the purple state. You've got to get it. And they may go rogue and make it a 3-party system, but somebody's got to get India or they're going to have a lot of power. So, yes. So it was JD Vance. Yeah. Cause that's how I didn't even know about Girard and that like Rene Girard, who I think his philosophy is very interesting. He's Catholic, I'm Catholic. I find that interesting too. And then I forgot, but I guess he was a professor of Thiel's, which I didn't realize.
Oh.
So that might be going. Someone just reminded me of that. Ian Davis just reminded me of that. But
okay.
So that's another thing that I think is interesting about Thiel is that because I heard him on Rogan and I was like, this guy, like Zuckerberg in Congress, I'm like, these guys aren't tech guys.
Yeah.
These guys are something else. And Zuckerberg was a classics major, which the CIA likes because you have to memorize stuff, words in Greek and stuff like that. Thiel was a philosophy major, like I think Soros. Soros was a philosophy guy. They made him rich so that he could change the world with this philosophy, in my opinion. Front running the pound is not something that is not known to someone. Like you can get tips to do that. And then the Thiel thing, I was like, oh, he's similar in that he gets the ideological backdrop. But, I'd be hard pressed to see like Elon Musk running 5 companies at once. He's the face guy. He's the face job. Anyway, so it was that's how you discovered who Thiel was. And you agree he's the probably most important of the tech face jobs.
Yeah, I would say that he's like Palantir is undeniably getting injected in like basically everything. Now, I don't think that, obviously Palantir was like bolstered by like the InQtel stuff and all of the government contracts they've gotten over the years. But that does seem to be what is leading the charge for like injecting AI and everything. They helped recruiting for Doge, for example. They have contracts not only with our DoD and basically every department, but also, foreign countries as well. Israel being one of the most prominent that comes to mind. But yeah, it's very, very clear-cut case of they're shoehorning him and his company in.
And a really important aspect of that, and I'm kicking myself because I'm not kicking myself. I'm happy, but it just kind of makes me sick. Like Palantir went public at 15, and I was like, oh my gosh, this company is going to be huge. But I couldn't bring myself to buy it because I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
So I didn't, but I don't want to go to hell, but I also like would love to have 5 new cars,
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, a beach house. But I didn't do it, and I'm glad, because I found out what they were doing in Israel. So it was like they really got blood on their hands. But
Oh yeah.
so I think a big part of getting those people in on the ground floor, I mean, Thiel probably is plugged in, the more I read, at on either a philosophical or a I think more philosophical level, and
Hmm.
more as a thought leader in the shaping of minds and ideas, rather than like, this is how we expand Palantir. You don't need that. Even,
Yeah.
Musk doesn't really need that. But they have to get these guys rich. They
Hmm.
have to get these guys with the money to make their influence and their lifestyle plausible, and also for them to be able to push it out and as a mask to the CIA or whatever. When they're spending money on someone's campaign or on a research program, you got to get them that money. And I
Yeah.
think that's how they start these things. $15 now, it's whatever he had in there is worth 150.
Yeah.
So there's billions of dollars right there that he can use for these purposes.
Absolutely. And like that's when you start getting into like the venture capital, and how, the things like the DoD will just throw money at, venture capital, or they'll have somebody like prominent running these things that's already a billionaire from, various other interests, whether or ventures, whether it's banking or, another big tech company or something like that, set these guys up on the board, and then they get to select who is successful in basically every private industry. Whether, we see that with things like BlackRock as like the most egregious example, but there are thousands of VCs and even think tanks and stuff. His Thiel Fellowship also is like another example of him, influencing early academics and
And those
so.
guys are all insiders. So that's why I think it's such a small group. But as far as picking, that's also I don't like. And you touched on this in one aspect or another in our going back and forth in DMs, that the trade deals, Japan said, okay, well, we'll take the 15% and we'll guarantee you $550 billion of investment,
Mhm.
which Trump gets to control. But what people I don't think probably have read is that 90% of that is loans. So he's saying we will make Japanese loans at these companies. So Trump gets to give them the payola of the loans. They don't have
Mhm.
to give that much money. He takes the 500 billion, it's still there, decides who gets it, which the kickback on that would be unbelievable, and
Mhm.
also the impact on society and industry. And his cronies get the fees, which will probably be 10% off the top for every single thing. And there's probably a multiplier. Well, I guess the multiplier is that debt. But that picking winners thing does shape the future, but it also provides a tremendous opportunity for corruption. And what they do is they just take a piece of the action. And if some of
Yep.
them go bust, it doesn't matter because they didn't really pay for it. And usually that kind of a carry is tax protected. So it's underestimating the money is, I
Mhm.
think, a mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, you start to see, especially consistent figures come up, like things like Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital, Palo Alto Networks, and these things that partner with them. And like Kleiner Perkins was essentially born out of a sort of a collaboration between the DoD and MIT, and they the under FDR, the DoD basically got like a bunch of MIT alumni like Vannevar Bush and Carl Taylor Compton and stuff, and they set up the very first venture capital fund as we know them today, called the American Research. Oh man, now I'm not going to remember the name. One sec. The American Research and Development Corporation, and that was sort of the very first. We're going to set up this fund with basically unlimited funds, whether it's coming from the government or other investors and stuff, to amass these funds to replace things like the Rockefeller Fund, and these things that were powered by just one family or one entity, and now it's anybody can get in. You'll see returns. We'll select who gets the massive funding and things like that. Um, the
I've never heard that. That's fascinating. So VC was created by the DoD And that is the seminal moment for Silicon Valley, for big tech. And that also is both Stanford and MIT. And
Absolutely.
then, of course, John Trump was at MIT probably just a few
Hmm.
years after that.
Even better, the very first company that the American Research and Development Corporation funded was Donald Trump's uncle's HVEC company. That was like their
Wow.
first successful venture.
What was that again? What was that?
Oh, I can't remember the name of it.
No, not the name of it, but what was the product? I forget. What is HVEC? What does that mean?
So it was like high voltage electrical systems that ended up being deployed for things like radar and radiation detection and
Oh, right.
like
Okay.
energy,
Yeah. Radar.
like
Yeah. And the
generators.
energy.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Oh, that's hilarious because
Hmm.
the legend is, true or not, that he got Tesla's papers.
Hmm. Yep. So
Funny.
allegedly got Tesla's papers and then falls into all of this funding from something that was created by the DoD, sets him up, and they get a lot of money from that.
HVAC was the name of the company.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. It became successful in building particle accelerators.
Yep.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Jeez Louise.
And
Yeah, but this
when
guy, yeah, but Trump's the like yet another outsider. Like, just a
right.
Obama for the right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually funny because his mentor was a guy named Carl Taylor Compton at MIT, and Carl Taylor Compton was associated with the Sloan Foundation, which is MIT based, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. He was part of like the National Defense Research Committee and the Office of Scientific Research and Development, the National Science Foundation. So a lot of these things that are still like driving things today.
He was the head of MIT for 18 years, from 1930 to 1948.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Interesting.
was basically, so it was him, this guy named Vannevar Bush, and Vannevar Bush was also MIT. He was National Defense Research Committee, Office of Scientific Research and Development, NASA. He worked with them, but his goal was essentially to, after or like during World War II, was slowly kind of convincing the government that, hey, we should stop spending all of our money exclusively on like bombs and weapons, and we should start focusing on like science and research and development and things like that. So he was sort of the mediator to get the military to start funding all of these like science and tech companies and stuff, and the American Research Development Corporation was sort of like the fruits of his labor.
Did he mean well, do you think?
No, absolutely
Okay.
not.
What did he think he was doing? What did they think they were doing? Dominating the world from a nuclear, like, are nukes real, by the way? Do you think nuclear weapons are real?
I don't think that the narrative that we've been given behind nuclear weapons is what they have said. I've done some researching into specifically the bombing of Hiroshima,
Right.
and there are so many details that just don't add up, sort of like a 9/11 thing where it's like, well, if this thing isn't true, then this other thing,
Yeah.
and then eventually
But
the
it's
whole
like the
thing.
moon landing. Like, maybe you
Yeah,
could get to the moon, but that fucking guy did not just
exactly.
like, look, I'm on the moon, and then zip back up into his spaceship and come home in 1969 or whatever. Like, he did not do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, interesting. So this guy, Vannevar Bush, where does that bring us in MIT? It looks like he was the dean of the MIT School of Engineering in 1932, and he
Hmm.
founded the company that became Raytheon. I think you
Yep.
just said something like that. Like, you've got so many details, it's hard to understand that like each and every one is a little nugget of gold. Go ahead, keep going.
Absolutely, yeah. Raytheon. He was involved with General Electric. Another person that was on this like American Research and Development Corporation was a guy named Ralph Flanders, and he was basically responsible for convincing Congress to pass legislation that incorporated the World Bank and the IMF in with the American economy. He was part of like the Business Advisory Council, Committee for Economic Development under FDR, part of the National Recovery Administration after the Depression, the Flood Control Commission. And then you had another man named Georges Doriot, who was part of it, who was also MIT. He was part of the U.S. Army's Military and Planning Division. And so these were like the four guys: Vannevar, Carl Taylor Compton, Georges Doriot, and Ralph Landers. And they facilitated the creation and maintenance of the American Research and Development Corporation. And Georges Doriot ended up being a mentor for a guy named Thomas Perkins, who also went to MIT. And Thomas Perkins is one half of the namesake of a VC called Kleiner Perkins, that still operates to this day, throws billions of dollars in VC every single year. And they were Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital were the two that funded Google when it first got started, and then a lot of other Silicon Valley.
There was a obviously like a limited hangout whitewash thing in an email, like a magazine, an online magazine called Quartz, which you might have come across, how the NSA created Google. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have.
It's good. It says that they were thinking, we need this, but we need to not pay for it. Like, we can't budget for it. And I guess that was the whole concept behind VC. Like, he didn't say that in that article, but you're telling me that they said, well, we give people returns and they'll do it. And you can put your thumb on the scale of those returns by making sure that you can use some government money for the research. And what they do, and they're doing this with AI. I was reading those documents that you and I kind of exchanged links to, where they have contests. And I think Sergey Brin won a contest like that, if that legacy is to be believed. But there's no reason not to do it that way. Right. You have a bunch of guys show up, and which guy is going to win? And the only difference is he's the only guy who gets to do it.
Yeah.
Because then you're giving him such an advantage in the advancing the tech. Like, I just saw yesterday an article that said, we're building nuclear reactors for our moon station.
Yeah.
So we need tiny little nuclear reactors for our moon. Everybody loves the moon. Everybody loves space. So let's build those. And then, like, by coincidence, we happen to need mini nuclear reactors for AI. So who are they going to give them to? Well, there's one company that's trying to make mini nuclear reactors for AI. And my guess is they wouldn't have $30 billion of oligarch money if they didn't know they were the ones who were going to get it.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's that kind of a thing, but it went back much further than I thought. What you're saying.
And it's crazy too, because then you start getting into like the late 80s and early 90s. There's a very prominent figure named Vinod Khosla, who was sort of running Kleiner Perkins. Right around the same time he was working with like Sun Microsystems, which Sun Microsystems, they were very, very, they were working with DARPA and the DoD and the NSA and stuff in their earlier days, and they ended up getting acquired by Larry Ellison. And what most people don't know is that Aladdin, the like risk assessment program that BlackRock and like the Bank of Israel and stuff use, that was created from Sun Microsystems. And so you have a guy that is involved in the creation of the system that they use for risk assessment for investing, also in charge of this VC capital that was created by the military.
That risk assessment thing, I never really understand with the SBF FTX thing, like the bank that went under the crypto thing, which how much you want to bet Trump pardons that kid?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Because those parents are really connected. One of the things that kept coming up in his apologia or whatever was, I didn't do the risk assessment right, risk mitigation, risk assessment. And I just have a feeling that there's something more profound to risk assessment. Maybe risk assessment is simply an excuse for hoovering up all data. It's possible, because you would have to have all the data.
Absolutely.
Just all the data. All data everywhere to assess. I mean, because to assess a risk, like the variables are like infinite practically.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing with that AI stuff is the data, and pulling down all those privacy laws that keep federal data from being shared, even with
Mhm.
other government entities. I
Mhm.
think that's all coming down in those AI executive orders or whatever they are. They're not all
Absolutely.
executive orders, but yeah.
Absolutely. And two, like when you consider, BlackRock came from Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems gets absorbed by Oracle, and Oracle was seeded by the CIA, and their responsibility was to build out VMware technology for cloud computing and cloud storage and stuff. So they create the catch-all for all of the data for the risk assessment for the investing to know who to invest into.
Wow. So do you think ultimately that this is, to use like Marxist terms, like capitalist, financial capitalist capture of government? I would say on the one hand, purely for financial reasons, but with that comes control and
Hmm.
also what I think is somehow like an ego driven megalomania too, because I think of this when they want to replace tips, which are 15% with
Hmm.
$15 minimum wage,
Yeah.
$15 minimum wage. And I was a waitress for a long time, and the gals I worked with were single moms. The only equivalent of that is like a construction worker for a guy. You can't get that kind of money.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, it's like, oh, they just want to make sure they get it all.
Yep.
They just want to make sure there's nothing left that they didn't get because they're so cool at doing that. And
Yeah.
like, it's so cool to be able to get it all. And like, you don't even have to create new if you can just get it from somebody who
Absolutely.
is creating it. And I mean, is that really what this is all about? Is there a little bit more to it? Is there like, are there lizard people or, like,
Yeah, it is tough to say exactly like because as we touched on earlier, it's this thing where like all these interests are converging, and I think the ultimate agenda is just control in any shape, form, and by any means necessary. And if two people, that seemingly have nothing in common are like, hey, I can use my blockchain technology with your AI technology and we'll create something we can sell to the government. And they make money. And I think that's what it is.
so yeah, I think that is definitely an essential element, if not the essential element. So I was just reading, we do this thing like I read these books, like little books like this, and this is the report from Iron Mountain, and people come and we chit chat and talk about it.
Hmm.
But the report from Iron Mountain on the desirability and possibility of peace, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was written in the 60s. And it's like, well, if we have nuclear war weapons and everybody has them, we'll never have war again. And that will collapse society.
Yeah.
And if you keep reading it, what you're really seeing, what they're really talking about is collapsing the hierarchy as it exists right now.
Hmm.
And I think that the hierarchy as it exists right now, which is the same as it was then, is totally obsolete from a technological or social point of view. They have to keep keep us from progressing in any way socially. So the control would be, of course, maybe it's obvious, just to keep those same people in power and secure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say more than anything, it seems like private corporations tend to play a big role in um, facilitating culture. So it seems like when they get to choose who's running the corporations that dictate the culture, they can sort of guide us wherever they kind of want to, whether it's social media, food companies, fashion companies, all of it.
And keeping us based, and I don't mean
Right.
based, I mean like keeping us on this base level of animalistic kind of stuff. It really, that's a way to kind of hold that in stasis. It's a constant effort to push down. Um, so that's interesting. Because I just try to think like why, but it has to be, it just has to be self interest, and it's pretty clear that it's just material self interest.
Yeah. And I think they spend so much time with so much material wealth and in these closed social circles that are, they can teeter on like the esoteric, I'm thinking like the Marina Abramovic parties and things like that. But it seems like it dehumanizes their mentality so that they don't see themselves as sort of part of the mass population. So it's almost like an isolating thing to make them more influential to do very like disgusting things like Project Lavender, for example.
I don't know what that is, so tell me in a second. But I want to say, like, when I watched Eyes Wide Shut, so it was good. You can good things about it, bad things about it. But I, and I witnessed this in Hollywood once when I was just sitting next to an actor who was bragging to us, complete strangers, about how young his girlfriend was. And I remember thinking, like, she's obviously just with you because you're rich and famous. Like, and then the thought occurred to me, and I got the same feeling with Eyes Wide Shut, that was cool for him. Like, he wasn't thinking part of his experience was not being admired by someone he respects.
Yeah.
It was owning this cool thing that will do stuff he tells it to do, even though it costs her self-respect. You know, like, it's a totally different relationship with human beings than I have.
Yeah.
And it's hard to understand that there is that disconnect, and maybe it comes from occultism, maybe it comes from losing religion, and you know, you could definitely go into ethnicity or whatever would lead to that. I don't know, but there's something there that they separate. You know, these people who treat human beings like animals, I think they don't think they are animals, yet they act like animals and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it too comes from you know, the academia part is a huge aspect of it, because some of the ways that they sort of facilitate like philosophy and things like that, they start incorporating things like Hegel and Kant and stuff, and people really, certain types of people really gravitate towards those. And I think that, you know, people like Thiel and a lot of I like to call them test reels. It's a term I picked up a few months ago, but it incorporates like transhumanism, extropianism, like the what is it? Not
Communitarianism?
Cosmism.
Oh.
That's it. Like the space stuff. And it's like this all-encompassing thing. Mark Andreessen has said that he is a test reel, but it's just an acronym for all these people pushing like mRNA, transhumanism, technocracy, and things like that. But I think what it happens is that they capture these people like very early, especially in like their academic careers, and they essentially create like a meritocracy of who is willing to carry this out the most. And let's reward those people for that. And that fosters this behavior of what I see now seems to be like them competing to see who can be the worst and feel great about it.
And that is also what I think people call the revelation of the method. I feel like they're literally Babe Ruth, like doing what Babe Ruth did, which is like, I'm going to do this. And if it happens, you know, it was me. And then they get big snaps from their, you know, gross friends, or like in Trading Places, like they get $1.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that Elon Musk at one point, you know, when he tweeted the whole, like, Trump is in the Epstein files thing, I bet he was like, watch, I'm going to make the internet go crazy. And he's in a group chat with like Andreessen and Lutnick and Thiel and all of them.
So, but here's the time to ask this question, which is, you know, where do the puppet masters end and the puppets begin? So I would say Trump is squarely an actor. I mean, scripted, and you can tell when he does stuff off the cuff. He's just extremely trained in, like most politicians, in just saying two things at once.
Yeah.
You know, Obama used to say nothing, and it was a similar effect. Trump says two things at once, and both sides pick what they want. Like, they're immigrants or rapists and nice people. Like, he literally says that, something like that. And but Musk seems, I mean, if I had to put him in one category or the other, I would make him a face job, an actor, an entertainer, and with basically nothing to do with the engineering side at all anymore. Like, even if he ever did, like, he has to understand. It's enough to. It would be quite challenging to really understand it. Like to even just be able to discuss it, and much less run 5 companies, not a chance in the world. There's no chance. But to be able to like Zuckerberg, like to be able to talk about it, it takes, you do have to pass an IQ test for that.
Yeah.
But, and like I said earlier, I think Thiel might be engaged in the philosophical aspect a little bit. But, where do you think, when you're naming these names, Andreessen and Thiel and Musk, and they're all in their group chat, is JD Vance there? Is, who's the, is King Charles there? Like, who's there? Netanyahu? Like, who's in the chat, and who's so far outside the chat that those guys don't even know that guy's name?
Yeah, it's tough to say sort of like where it ends and where it begins, because as I start doing these maps, it seems like the further out I go in like proximity to the main players, I'll suddenly like come across a name that links all the way across the map to the other end, and it's like some big thing. So it does seem to be like a panopticon of like a revolving door of names and entities and stuff. I would say that,
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I would say that if I had to like put a hierarchy on the power structure, the banks are probably like the most influential, especially right now.
Above defense.
Uh,
Because I wonder sometimes, because defense people don't point to it like they used to, but it might be as important.
Yeah, I do think that you're probably right in the sense that the defense is sort of like the authority and keeping people in lockstep and
it's
stuff.
It's the COO.
Yeah, they're sort of like the carrot and stick in first place, where
totally.
The banks will reward you if you go along with things, shower you with money. The military will be there in case you
we'll
don't.
publish pictures of you and a boy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so this might be a good time, unless I'm interrupting your flow, to see a web. And we have to do it a lot for audience. Listeners, you don't have to throw it up if you don't want to. But what do you think?
Yeah, do you have a preference as to which web?
Let's put Thiel and Musk, Trump. Should we put Netanyahu and Chucky 3 in the same room? Do you have one that's that big?
Yeah, I've got one that's got I think pretty much all of them on here.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Do you have the power to throw that up, or do I have to?
I just shared my screen with you. All right. And so this was so the way that I sort of do these webs is I'll go live and I'll just start with like this started with just a picture of Peter Thiel and a picture of Elon Musk, and I was like, okay, so I know about like X.com, I know about PayPal and stuff, and I color code everything to kind of make it a little easier to follow. The people will be in red, companies will be in green.
Nice.
Yeah.
People are going to have to come look at this. We're going to be on Rumble and YouTube for starters on the Monica Perez show, just if they want to see this. But we're going to try to do it so they can just understand by listening too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you have like venture capital is like light blue. I have think tanks in here and stuff. And essentially I go live and I'm like, all right, so I need people to help me, research everything Peter Thiel has ever touched. Whether it's, company, VC, an institution, like he speaks at the Hoover Institution a lot, which is, involved with Stanford pretty heavily, his alma mater, but it essentially just starts escalating from there. So like Thiel's, links to Neuralink and Tesla and stuff that Peter Thiel has facilitated supporting. Twitter, SpaceX, and things like that. You have the PayPal mafia, obviously, with some of the bigger players there.
Wait, hold on. Can we look at the PayPal mafia for a second? Can we rattle off what names?
Yeah.
Are they all on this? Who do you include in that?
Yeah.
Who do you yourself?
So they're not all like in super close proximity with it, just because like they have various other ties and stuff. But like UPenn, Luke Nosek, Max Lebshin, Harris Fricker, David Sachs, Howard Lutnick. Let's see, who's another one? I'm trying to think here.
I mean, and Musk and Thiel.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Musk and Thiel. I think there's like two or three others that are escaping me at the moment.
Yeah,
But
no, that's fine. That's good enough. I mean, I just wanted to hear a couple of names that we knew.
mhm.
So that's the Lutnick. Is that this? That's the not Lutnick that's in the administration, right? And that's the same guy as was that Cantor Fitzgerald, whose
Yep,
brother died in 9/11. Okay,
yep, and
that's so freaky. It's like what credibility this guy has, and I was just like, oh man, you can't really. And then I'm looking, I'm thinking, I don't know. He might have gotten a tip. And
absolutely. I mean, when you think about the fact that he was Jeffrey Epstein's neighbor, he helped put Rumble through their IPO essentially, which is just Peter Thiel's YouTube, and different things like that. Him absolutely being in the administration, him being very close with like the Chabad Lubavitch and the Likud party out of Israel and stuff. So
yeah,
yeah, Lutnick is a big player. I'm under the operating under the assumption that he is kind of like Trump's handler, which is why we
yeah.
always see him in the background.
Do you think absolutely everything traces back to Israel?
I don't think everything does. I
Because
think
that's being really fostered,
yeah,
and I get a little like, why in the past 10 years did it go from like you're getting taken off the air to you're getting put on Fox News if you and I'm not saying about what's happening in Israel about Gaza. I'm just talking about the control mechanism. Like it'd be pretty bold for the fake out to be the truth, but
mhm,
I'm not putting it past them. I mean, Trump got elected based on fear of real conspiracies,
yeah,
actual globalists,
absolutely.
they totally weaponized that and it worked. So I'm not saying it's beyond the possibility, but I mean, is there a top, and is that Netanyahu can't be the top. He's
No,
always on the run.
yeah, I think it's more you had the influence of like the 13 families who were very early like industrialists, whether it was banking or like the railroad or steel companies, oil companies and stuff, and I think that set them up to then proliferate their power down and diversify it into things like big tech and venture capital and things like that. So
That
um
makes more sense. And did you ever hear of the 60 families?
no.
The 60 families. I just read about it in I did a show with James Perloff. He was talking about his Lincoln book, a short book on the Lincoln assassination, and in it he refers to an old book called The 60 Families. You might want to dig into that too.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, that makes sense to me because yeah, I mean it just makes sense that they're old families, they're big. Yes, somebody probably, kowtows to the others. Obviously, the Rothschilds like had a lot of agents who in their own rights were super powerful and rich, but they were Rothschild agents in the end. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, like when I think back to like JP Morgan, for example. JP Morgan was mentored by this rich banker out of Switzerland named Anthony Joseph Drexel. And like I had never heard that name outside of the company Drexel Burnham Lambert that ended
Yeah,
up
Drexel
becoming a part.
Lambert. That was the predecessor to the bank I worked in New York, and I worked with a lot of those guys. They were interesting.
Yeah, and that's where you get like Nigel Farage used to work at Drexel Burnham Lambert.
No way.
Yes,
That means he's rich
probably.
because
Yeah,
these guys, what would happen is you could, as a worker, you would have the opportunity to invest in like their little deals, and you would not really have to come up with much money. You could leverage it or whatever. And I knew guys probably 20 years after the fact who were still getting real checks
yeah,
from some of those old investments. So if he was of any kind of standing or had been there for any amount of time, that's probably true everywhere. I didn't really work at too many banks, but that's interesting that Nigel Farage worked there. That's really, but
yeah.
I mean, it's not it's, I'm not rich. I worked at
Right.
one of those places.
Yeah, no, he was like he was a pretty prominent part of it. I think it was in
Yeah.
the 80s.
Yeah.
And that they ended up doing like the junk bonds and stuff that
Yeah,
ended
for
up
sure.
making them insolvent. But Michael Milken basically got all of the charges put on him, and then Donald Trump pardoned him in his first term.
and I'm guessing he had some acorns buried in the backyard.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure like Drexel Burnham Lambert ended up getting restructured into like Apollo Global Management under Leon Black and Mark Rowan.
They fired me on the radio.
Really?
Yes, they took over. WSB was more or less an old family business, and they sold it to Apollo. And like literally, we used to hit on Stacey Abrams, election fraud, and Epstein. And then in the end, I like started talking about 9/11. Oh, and then my last show was like, holy shit, COVID, this isn't going to be 2 weeks, it's going to be 2 years. And like, literally just like someone's at the door.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ms. Perez.
Right.
Your car is waiting.
And Leon Black probably saw your Epstein content and didn't like that you were talking about his friend that way.
I sincerely doubt that he saw any of my content, but I'm confident that whoever was running the media is like, yeah, no schizos.
Yeah.
That was it. I was done for. But yeah, so something else you said was, I think, keep going, keep talking if you remember where you were.
And when I actually looked into like some of the things that Apollo Global owns out, and it's things like Chuck E. Cheese and Claire's and like all these like kid oriented,
very cultural. The Limited, didn't Les Wexner do The Limited?
Yeah, and it's just interesting to see that like they're still able to operate. The ties to Epstein, nobody questions it, and they fund and facilitate all these different things, and it just ends up being like another shell. But to know that it was like built off the ashes of a VC capital that was started by a Swiss banking family that was responsible for J.P. Morgan and Chase, that also ties back into Epstein, and that's what that like revolving door kind of thing I was talking about earlier.
Do you think what Epstein was all about? Was it money laundering? Was it blackmail? Was it, international intrigue? Was it all of the above? Was he CIA or Mossad, or are they the same thing?
Yeah.
All
of the above. Absolutely. I think that a large aspect of it obviously is like the blackmail operation and the money laundering.
Information has value.
Absolutely. I think they say data is the new gold.
Dude, that's why those AI things are freaking me out.
Yeah.
And putting, hammering down, like Trump apologists are saying, well, it's inevitable. I'm like, by the way, we're the ones who do all this stuff. Or I shouldn't say we. The empire is the one who steals our money and facilitates that, puts overinvest, by the way. Then you're going to get a huge overinvestment collapse because they don't care about that. They just want to crowdsource it. So they want to encourage the investment, even though by accelerating it, there will be a lot of malinvestment, which will have terrible impact on the economy and us personally. The inflation we're experiencing right now, I believe, is directly traced back to the tech crash in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, thank you. So when they, by the empire facilitating that, they're pulling down barriers of our own protection, the stuff like nukes and everything, which, yes, I'm a libertarian. I don't care for regulation. But when you have highly regulated industries that have not emerged organically to be self-regulating, that haven't had the small-scale accidents and hand slaps and lawsuits and torts that keep industry in check in a free society, not to mention they'll probably be insulated from torts like vaccines are and everything. So those kind of bad policies. And then also part of it is to disseminate it to the rest of the world. So it has nothing to do with keeping America on top. Who will be enriched by it? Not me. I have no interest in surveilling myself or anybody else, but the big thing is the data. And you can see, not only does that invade our privacy, but a lot of smaller companies, a lot of tech companies, whatever, data is a huge asset for them.
Yeah.
And I've noticed like Facebook is all about everyone needs to share data. It's like, yes, because then you don't have to pay for it and they can't compete with you. Yeah. If data cannot be privately owned, but it should be privately owned, and companies will protect it because they don't want to give other people competitive advantages. So they will protect your data. It's really disturbing. All those things were very disturbing to me.
Absolutely. Like with the original, industrial revolutions and stuff, our physical bodies were kind of like the workers' commodity.
Human
And
capital.
yeah, and so you had child labor and like all of these unsafe working conditions and things like that. And I think we're seeing the exact same kind of like egregious, they don't care who's going to impact or negatively affect, but for our mental instead of our physical now. And so it's, the data, the attention, the time and stuff. I think that is now what people consider like the commodity.
And I think doesn't Gates have a patent on basically keystroke erg energy? Like, did you ever hear of that? And so I noticed people will quote that World Economic Forum article, which was definitely put out for a reason, but they'll often say you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Sometimes they leave out the first part, which is you will have no privacy.
Yeah.
And you will own nothing and you will be happy. And I don't know where the happy part is probably a little soma in your tea or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, so interesting. Okay. So you were saying data is the new gold.
Yeah, and with like the Epstein thing, I think that the larger part of the conversation that they're trying to keep focus on the sex trafficking part specifically to to make that the end all be all of the story. Like, look here no further when, there's very clear records of him dabbling in like transhumanist stuff and cloning technologies and like being associated with the Alcor Life Extension Fund and seeding various AI and crypto companies very early on in like the late teens, early 2010s and stuff. And I think that it's sort of that, hey, we don't really need this guy anymore because we have Palantir and Mossad and CIA, MI6, so we don't really need to blackmail people because they're blackmailing themselves by submitting all their things digitally. So I think, whether you think he actually died, whatever, I don't think that it really...
I think he died, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't think that
they put out the death photos for a
Yeah.
reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, I personally, I think he might be chilling in Israel somewhere.
I think Ghislaine Maxwell is, and she wants a pardon so she can come out of hiding, but I don't think she's in a fucking jail.
Yeah.
And her dad probably died of old age, but Epstein, I think, is dead.
Yeah.
So, right, you don't need that anymore, and you don't need loose ends. You can, I think you can get people to kill themselves. I don't know what shame Epstein would have to... What you could possibly do to shame a guy like that into killing himself. And if he cares about anyone, does he have children?
I think he does have a lot of children, and they are
That
all
he knows?
from like the IVF stuff, and like I think that it was a have as many children as possible, kind of like the Elon thing. The guy that's over, what is it, Telegram has over 100 children. I think that is
no way.
Promise you can Google it. Or your preferred search engine, but
right.
Yeah, the guy over Telegram has, I think it's 106 or 107 children, something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they're not like having these kids organically. They're taking that same transhumanist agenda of like artificial wombs and IVF and stuff, so that they can do that, but also normalize it. So when Elon was going through that whole thing with that Ashley St. Clair girl, they made a heavy focus on the IVF part of it. And I think that feeds into things like CRISPR and gene editing and stuff that Epstein was also very, very prominent in. I think a lot of that was happening under his Zorro Ranch property.
Yeah, I am... He claimed to have no biological children, according to what's obviously an AI-generated article.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if he has anybody he cares about. But torture, maybe they said that they'll torture him to death. So, but part of the Epstein thing, I feel like the way it's being used right now is a distraction from what I assume is happening overseas or whatever. Oh, well, the AI stuff.
Yeah.
That AI stuff, absolutely, for sure. And I also think the aid, the humanitarian crisis they're talking about in
Hmm.
Gaza is, I was saying that it was going to be a backdoor for U.S. troops on the ground, but I think it is the front door. I think they're just putting U.S. troops on the ground over there
Yeah.
because of that now, because they're contractors who do the aid
Yeah.
distribution. So I don't know how much is being distracted from that, uh, but that AI stuff is so radical, and I'm not a fan of laws or anything, but that if the US government had any purview to do that and totally trampling on states' rights, did you notice that?
Hmm.
Like money will
Yeah.
be withdrawn if you don't capitulate, which is crazy. Like you can't force, that's why I hate federal money. I hate it for
Hmm.
research. I hate it for everything. And it's totally unconstitutional top to bottom. But if you're going to have that shit, it has got to be a congressional law.
Yeah.
It can't be who's going to execute it. If they're writing the laws, who's the executor or the executive power over that? It's really bad news. However, so we had a few. Do you have a flow that you're telling me? I'm looking. Okay.
Um,
We talked about so I have you told me gave me a little foreshadowing. You got who Alvin Krongard. Did we talk about him by name?
he hasn't come up yet, but he is very important because he was the guy that basically helped set up InQtel. He is also the guy that basically trained like Eric Prince and things like that. I'm trying to see if I can find
I'm
it
waiting
here.
for them to give Eric Prince the Secret Service.
Right. Yeah, I saw it too. Like he has a dream of running like essentially FEMA camps, but private FEMA camps and for immigrants. And you know the second that that's set up.
You know, something that I noticed very briefly during Trump's first impeachment
Hmm.
was like people were all up in arms that he was withholding aid to Ukraine that they were somehow entitled to. What people were not up in arms about is that he was also, I found one article about this and I don't think I could find it again.
Hmm.
Uh, he was also withholding aid to like the triangle. It was like El Salvador, Guatemala, and what would be Honduras
Hmm.
until they agreed to allow immigration facilities to be basically FEMA camps for immigrants to be built there. And
Ah,
I never really got anywhere. I'm not great. I wanted to ask you about how you do your research. I never really got to the bottom of it, but I assume that it would be our contract, Trump
yeah.
or whatever, those contractors who would be doing it. And they weren't fostering, and their taxpayers have to pay for it. That kind of stuff is everywhere in these tariff wheeling and dealing, I think.
Hmm.
But how do you do, if you don't mind this little tangent for a second, how do you do anything special to get your research done? Are you just great at pulling on threads? Do you have sources? Like, what's your story?
So this is probably going to be a red flag for some people, but I always start at Wikipedia. I think it is
Oh
a
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
I think it's a good way to get like a general overview.
The early life section's always interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And two, like just looking at their career, like it outlines, this person was on this board, this person was part of this company and stuff, and those are like public records that get sourced that you can go
Yes.
verify. And I always do like verify anything that I'm looking at by going to the sources. All by the way, removepaywall.com is the
Yeah,
key
because
site.
they're always paywalled. I'm like, what kind of bullshit is that? Like, that
Yeah,
is not a legit, encyclopedia.
exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
called removepaywall.com.
Yeah, and it works a lot like the Internet Archive, but I have issues with the Internet Archive because that you can pay to have content removed from there,
I
which
did not
I
know
get. I guess someone from the Trump administration just did that recently.
they
And it,
they shut it down and scrubbed it like a month ago.
yeah,
Remember?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was out for like a
Uncool.
week. But
Yes. And
yeah, that's
removepaywall.com.
hmm and what they do is when you put it in there, they give you four different options. So like if one of them doesn't, like one routing method doesn't work or like still brings up the paywall, you have different options you can choose from. The only thing I've ever seen be a blocker is like they'll make you do a click captcha box, which ironic that the robots are asking me whether or not I'm a robot at this point.
Well, you don't like CAPTCHA? What
Um,
don't I know about that?
oh, it's just basically, I think that it was created as a way to remove like plausible deniability for people whenever actions are taken on a computer.
So you say, well, you knew what you obviously were engaging on a like a
Yeah,
front of your brain level.
yeah, and it also removes like, oh, this could have been an automated process or a
Right.
bot or something
And
like
it
that.
trains AI, right? When it
Yep,
doesn't it? Yeah.
absolutely, like all the picture clickings and stuff that you do. Luckily, this
Uncool.
one is just like a click box,
Yes.
so you don't
Okay.
have to like do
I
anything but
think
click the box. But
I
yeah.
think CAPTCHA does. I mean, I don't know if something like that would need to have it, but
Hmm.
there's some things where bots are a real problem.
Hmm.
So like I don't usually mind the CAPTCHA thing because I feel like
Right.
sometimes it's hard to keep a website up if it's being attacked. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Um,
Okay, so yeah, so you start at Wikipedia, which I absolutely agree. I sent you that little blurb about the guy Henry
yeah.
Singleton, which I asked a couple of people if they knew about him because I had never heard of him before, but I was trying to figure out why Austin, Texas. I remember UT set up an incubator a long time ago. I'm like, well, they obviously drew tech there on purpose, but who was behind it?
Yeah.
And I traced it back to that guy. And nobody seems to have heard of him, but it's all completely in Wikipedia. It's like he was in the OSS, he did this, he did that, and I mean, it's now you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very helpful.
Absolutely. And after I go to Wikipedia, I'll go like look at investor records. So, various sites that post like whether it's PR releases from the company or investor statements, financial records.
About
Um,
and history, like
hmm.
history, founding is
Yep.
very helpful because a lot of the global stuff, like you never heard of those people on the board, and you're like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you
Absolutely.
see. That's when DEI, I think, is really telling. Like a bunch of young, good-looking chicks on some super global corporation, and I'm thinking, whoever's controlling this has a much easier time controlling this
Yeah.
when he gave these seats out like diamond rings instead of to people who would be like, hey, wait a second, it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely.
And I noticed that there for a while there only women could be hired to boards. And if you do that before only women can be hired to executive positions, you have a bunch of people on boards who have no executive experience and really cannot, they don't know what to look for.
Yeah.
And they're easily manipulable, and then they'll vote with the most influential person, which is probably the
The
whatever, the
the person that
chairman,
put them in the put
person who
them
put
in the
them there.
spot. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it ends up being like, BlackRock was a huge driver of like the ESG stuff, and they have
Yes.
Aladdin coming from the Sun Microsystems. They have all the data, and it comes full circle every single time.
Yes. So that's another thing is people will say Vanguard and BlackRock, I think the same. They own most of everything. But a lot of that is like 401ks and pension
Hmm.
funds and everything. But that doesn't mean that they don't wield the power. And I realized a long time ago that a lot of the CEOs, they're really politicians. They actually
Hmm.
aren't necessarily like Larry Fink. If you ever
Yeah.
look into his backstory, he's like Trump, like it's just like a terrible track record of poor
Yeah.
performance. It's like how
And then Aladdin came along, and he
Oh,
became this
there you go.
financial
Yeah.
guru.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. So you're suggesting that Aladdin gives them an unfair advantage because it has data that is basically not public. Because theoretically, every stock price should be pregnant with all known information.
yeah.
So you should be able to, nobody should be able to beat the market. You should be able, yet the dumb
Well,
money does lose.
absolutely. I think what really started to cause like a snowball effect was they started licensing Aladdin out for other investment companies to use. And like when you look at the board of BlackRock, like you have Susan Wagner, who's part of like the Swiss Re, which is a Swiss bank, and she was part of like the Lehman Brothers. She's part of like Matrix Capital. You had You had like Charles Halleck, who was over like Barclays. You had like the Boston Group, the first Boston Financial.
BCG? No, oh,
Yeah.
okay. BCG is
Um,
the consulting group I believe that Mitt Romney was a part of, but I'm sure they have a finance.
yeah,
Or was
yeah.
that Bain? Oh no, that's Bain. But yes, yeah, Boston Group. Okay, Boston's got big finance, big,
Yeah,
big.
they're like Microsoft, Starbucks,
Yeah,
things like that. And you just start to get like essentially people that are connected in various different avenues and connected directly to banks or other venture capital and stuff, and they colluded together with something called the UJA Federation of New York, and most of the people on the BlackRock board are part of this, but they were essentially a huge. They were largely involved in like the post 9/11 stuff that went on in New York, like working with the New York Federal Reserve and things like that. And I think there was a huge reset with 9/11 that ended up taking place, because then we did become sort of like a risk-based economy according to these people.
you got to explain that.
Yeah, so I think that 9/11 essentially like stoked this sentiment. When you look at all the companies that were involved, like you had Paul Bremer had a company there, Howard Lutnick had a company there, the Lehman Brothers, the Salomon Brothers, and all these things that were sort of involved with less than good, I guess I should say, like ventures or connections and stuff. And essentially, I think what they did was they established a way to pre-rig the game. And with the crashing of 9/11, it instilled this sort of sense of insecurity, that ended up snowballing, I think, into the financial crisis that we ended up having later. But everyone wanted to get ahead of things financially, so they were looking to like figure out algorithms and stuff that could have them disperse their assets strategically, and they all looked at BlackRock. And BlackRock had this Aladdin system that was coming out of Sun Microsystems connected with Oracle, and they pitched it as a, hey, we can help you with your investments. We have this program that can tell you what's the most risky investments, what's the least risky based on like socioeconomic factors and the economy. And
That's funny because in the report from Iron Mountain, it says we can use programs to determine the impact on the prices of real estate in lower Manhattan of a slight change in the draft law, a minor change in the draft law. They actually revisit that example a couple of times because it was in the 60s where the draft did have some impact, but a minor change in the 60s, 60 years ago.
yeah,
They were able to use computers to predict asset values based on policies, which is why I think Congress shouldn't own stocks at all. They should not.
I agree.
They don't even need to divest them. They need to not trade at all. When I was in an investment bank, I couldn't trade. You weren't allowed to trade. You'd have to ask, like, hey, can I? And they'd have to look through everything. So basically, you couldn't trade at all. And there's no reason why they shouldn't have that same thing. Now they have this thing called the Honest Act. And I was like, what's the catch? And I had some tweets telling me the catch is they get to sell everything, get their gains tax-free, reinvest all their money in like some other, similar investments, something crazy like that. So keep your eyes out on the
Okay.
devil in the details there. But when you called it a risk-based economy, are you saying that rather than investments being made based on anticipated demand or changing tastes, it predicts? I mean, those are not unrelated thoughts, like what will be the social reaction, but they simply look at the risk return, which could cause malinvestment, because what you would actually see if people were looking to anticipate the future, or people's taste, you would actually see slightly overinvestment in stuff that's really popular.
Yeah.
And then, you get a little creative destruction there. But this could potentially, among many other things that maybe I'm not even getting, cut off the creative fringes of investment where some very cool stuff comes out of the fringy, risky thing, and entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial activity. Yeah, it's a tragedy. Things getting so you're unable to. It becomes increasingly difficult for people, like all the attacks on small businesses, from tariffs to COVID, really impacts both what we get to enjoy in our community and what people get to do for their own living.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that there has probably been, 100 times over, like this status quo changing technology or product or system that ends up getting suppressed financially, algorithmically, much like we do on social media.
Interesting, because it would have unpredictable outcomes. And that's funny because it dovetails very well with maintaining the hierarchy. And I was going to mention earlier that I've read that in China during the dynasties, they suppressed technology because they knew it would have such an impact on society that they couldn't be sure they could keep the pole position.
Absolutely. And I think now, like, the fact that they have this sort of like VC capital where they can choose who is successful and who isn't, is why they're so comfortable with deregulating AI as much as they are, because they realize that, okay, well, if we strip all of the regulations away, then all of the companies that we've invested in can do these, unethical, unlawful, unmoral things and amass massive amounts of, profit through facilitating like government and private contracts. We'll make a bunch of money, and then we'll start regulating everything so that other people can't do this type of AI or that type of AI, and it'll eventually pigeonhole us into like a couple of acceptable ones that you're able to use.
So that reminds me of, is it Section 230? What's the 27 words that invented the internet or something, where you don't have to be responsible for content, internet creators. So my guess is, because I noticed that in the AI executive orders and stuff, that they want to kind of open it up like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm sure the argument will be made. It's like the internet. That's what created the internet. You have to have this open field. You have to have this unfettered development. However, similar to what has happened. So now they want to close the door after the oligarchs have been established, after the oligopoly has been put in place, like one leader in every niche, highly controlled. And then you say, okay, well, completely bar new entrants, seems to me. They're ahead of that with AI. They've already have that oligopoly. They're making it look like they have to foster it, and there's an open field out there, but they probably were way ahead of it with the internet too. But yeah. So I did notice that parallel.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me a lot of like the .com boom, where we had this. It was the Wild West. Anybody could just start a website, and who knows where it'll take you. And then a few very select websites were chosen to get venture capital support, bank investments, government approval, and then everything else fell to the wayside. And now we have Facebook, Twitter, and like the selected sites that.
And if it didn't, it was attacked.
Yeah.
So Napster, or I just think of the example of Gawker.
Yep.
That was free media. Now I know what the proof is that they assassanoted it, and it was Hulk Hogan and Thiel.
I know.
And Thiel.
Charles Harder.
Yeah, funny bedfellows there.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to ask you. You reminded me of this earlier. Like Aladdin or whatever reminded me of Promise Software, which was a Robert Maxwell thing. And I think I might have heard you talking about Pegasus. Is Pegasus the thing that makes me think of Promise? There's another software that's like that. So what is Pegasus? What is that? I forget what it is now, because I know what Promise is. I've done a lot of work on that.
Yeah.
Where it was created as an aid for law enforcement to find perps or suspects in custody elsewhere. So it was designed to be able to access different systems, different not operating systems, but different software platforms, and it got stolen by the US government from the guy who made it.
Yeah.
And then that in turn was basically stolen by Robert Maxwell and Israel and sold to other countries where they were using it to spy on their own people and whatnot. But Israel had a back door
Yep.
and could always look into that. And I think Pegasus may have been created by Israelis, if I'm not mistaken.
The NSO group.
Okay. So if you can remind me or do you have any thoughts on what is going on with that? What
Yeah,
that
so-
is and what they're using it for?
So I think that the Pegasus software was sort of like this catch-all spyware that could be sort of like silently embedded in different programs or planted on devices, even remotely. Like it's so bad to the point where like different exploits and stuff can be taken advantage of. Someone can send you a Telegram or a WhatsApp that's like a PDF file, and because of the way that like PDFs are shared across that platform, it automatically like downloads a preview to your phone, and that download can be cached with like an exploit from the Project Pegasus to then capture all of the information on your device. And so it's sort of like a malware spyware hybrid that Mossad and I would honestly say like the CIA, MI6 and stuff use all the time.
How pervasive is it? Where do they use it on? Do you think they use it on targets, or do you think they just use it on anybody they have the slightest interest in? And I am definitely not one of those people, because during the fire, if anyone gave a shit about me, they would have burned down my house and 2,000 books, and they didn't. So
Yeah.
I know their shadow banning is hell of a drug. It's just
Yeah.
totally like, it keeps us all safe, but also keeps us all completely neutralized. So they don't. My point is that they don't really. I don't think they need to spy on every single person.
Right.
And I'm sure they will have the capacity eventually. I'm not sure they have the bandwidth right this second. So where do you think they are using that right now mostly?
I think that they strategically use it on like foreign and domestic targets within the state of Israel, but also here in the United States and abroad. I think that they target people specifically with it, and then let those exploits and different like compromising files that'll allow that on. They just don't stop it, and so it gets passed around, shared, put in group chats and stuff where they'll just capture everybody's data, and they might not need it right now,
Yeah.
but who knows?
Well, that's what those fusion centers were for. 100
Yeah.
years of human communication. And so I guess they could use it for they could definitely use it to add into their Aladdin stuff. Like they could definitely use it just simply for profit. They could use it for control. They could use it for blackmail. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So I also wanted in this book, it caught my eye and it reminded me of something that you mentioned, the IEEE.
Yep.
And in here, there's a chapter, which I forgot. I'm surprised how far into this book I got. I read almost the whole thing, but I think I stopped at the chapter called Internet Privacy Funded by Spies. That's a chapter in this book. And when I looked into some of the things you had mentioned, IEEE was one of them, but you also said IOBNT, which I didn't know. I don't know WBAN. I know DARPA. I know Lockheed. I know RAND. Can you touch on either the title of that book or why you even highlighted IEEE for me?
Yeah. So I sort of look at the IEEE as like the WHO or United Nations of tech. So while they're not technically like a governing body, they are the ones that sort of issue like standards and protocols for tech to interoperate with each other, regardless of like region or anything like that. Like they have a huge part to play in like the like the IPv4, IPv6 standardization of the internet, for example, where it's like no matter where you are in the world, the IEEE says you have to be IPv4 or IPv6. That gets every other tech company and things like that to adhere to those, and that's what causes the global homogenization of technology.
Right. And then that is the kind of thing that makes stuff easier to kind of hack into and normalize. Okay. So what what else do we want to cover? First of all, I don't know if we want to touch on the bio digital convergence. First of all, I want to make sure you got everything out, because that was a very, like, the perfect amount of stuff that you said that we could probably cover. Did we leave anything out on that?
I think that so far what we've covered has been great. I think that the one aspect that is missing is like the like social psyoping of people, which is connected to a lot of these things. Like I brought up the NSO group specifically. They're a subsidiary of Q Cyber Technologies out of Israel, which has another
It's
subsidiary.
just funny. The
Yeah,
Q stuff is just everywhere.
it'll get
And
even
doesn't it mean
funnier.
something? Doesn't Q mean something?
It's supposed to be the highest level clearance for the
Right.
Department of Energy. But Q Cyber Technologies also owns this subsidiary called OSY Technologies, who is paying Michael Flynn as a consultant for them right around the time that he was the NSA director. And
Dude, it makes me laugh when, like, patriots love Michael Flynn. I'm like, he was the head of that weird little defense intelligence agency that
Yep.
created ISIS.
Yeah.
Like, when it created, he was just like, yes, that's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yep.
Like, dude, he's in on it. Like, what
Yeah.
like, that is, and he gets his payments. He gets his pays, like, even small time kind of guy.
Speaking fees, book deals.
Yes, it's so annoying they get to be here. I hate to say it because my mother loved Oliver North, but I'm like, Mom,
Yeah.
you gotta look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
So interesting.
I think with like the cognitive dissonance as far as like where technology is heading, because like we're seeing advancements in crypto and AI and mRNA and stuff. I am under the belief, just like with all my research and stuff, all of it is connected, and like looking at it through this siloed thing is only keeping people like further ingrained and like dragging their feet. Following politics specifically, I think automatically puts you behind, because they were, funding and studying the technology 10, 20 years ago for the stuff that they're passing laws for today. So if you follow the tech and the money and stuff, politics is always behind.
I gotta tell you something. So I think that really digging into false flags which I've always done, but they closed the internet on February 14th, 2018. You really can't get like the real truth like you used to be able to. I remember the day because it was the Parkland thing. But they waste people's time on truth. Like, that's the thing. So some of this stuff, the conspiracies or who's at the top or whatever, what Trump says, like, a lot of that stuff's true, but you can really fall into it. And then I have this thing which absolutely alienates everybody I tell it to, because I'm always saying it on a podcast. For me, podcasts, doing them, listening to them, and I love them. Obviously, I live for them, but they're to politics what video games are to sports.
Yeah.
So you're
Absolutely.
just, and that's what. So I think that's almost like it's almost like true crime. Yes, it's true. It is true. Like, this guy did kill that woman, but you're not solving the problem. Like, it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's great because it's true. And the plots are so amazing. It's just amazing that no one can see it. Like, the Trump stuff, like, it's just amazing to me. Like, it's amazing. Like, my mother, he just loves this country. He's a good, or the people think he's Christian. I'm like, he's had 3 wives with what, like, I don't, and it's really nuts. And, but there's something to it. That's their psychological research obviously paid off.
Oh yeah, like when you look into people like in the Flynn circle, like General McChrystal, Michael Aquino starts coming up, and he like co-authored the Mind War thing.
Got a copy of that.
Yeah, he founded the like Temple of Set and all that, and Flynn is quoted as saying like MK Ultra for life, and so
Really?
Yes. So you have, obviously the Epstein stuff, the Trump is the savior stuff, all going on, while at the same time they're keeping you here so that they can build all of these technocratic biodigital systems, and stuff, and nobody's paying attention to it.
And what should we? What do you recommend?
So I think that looking at things like DARPA, is sort of one of those things where I've heard it mentioned a few times and heard the connections to like Jeff Bezos's grandfather and stuff, but they do play a huge role, especially when it comes to like collaborating with private companies. And you look at like MIT, especially. At this point, I consider MIT just sort of like an extension of the Department of Defense.
I think Stanford is too.
Yeah. Stanford.
Siri stands for Stanford Research Institute.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it just turned on.
Sun
Go to sleep.
Microsystems. Sun Microsystems SUN is Stanford University Network.
No.
Yeah. And that's what Larry Ellison bought that became Oracle. And so not only like
in
the
plain sight.
Absolutely. Yeah, like not only the like Peter Thiel acolytes, because I would say 1 in 5 of the people that follow Thiel or are in his realm came from Stanford, because he's such a prominent presence there. He did like the paper there. He's a guest speaker at the Hoover Institution all the time. And I almost feel like he's revered as sort of like this larger than life sort of character there, like a hero.
That must have been after my time. I went to law school and business school there, but it was right when the tech stuff was, I remember there was one kid whose dad was in government and he knew nothing about tech. And he's just like, I think it was already booming. It was already booming, but like people, it was still ground floor enough. But I think Thiel, I'm trying to look up how old he is. Do you know how old he is?
Not offhand. I think
born in 1967. So yeah, he would not. I would have been before his time there.
Gotcha.
So interesting. And I wonder what he did. He was an undergrad there.
Mm-hmm.
He was an undergrad there. And it says he has a law degree. Did he have a law degree from there?
He was, I know that he was dorm mates with our current NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, while they were at Stanford together.
Really? Hold on. I gotta look at this. Sorry, I don't want to waste your time, but
you're good.
I studied philosophy at Stanford. That I thought. The replacement of a Western culture program with a culture, ideas, and values prompted him to co-found the Standard Review. That was an Irving Kristol thing. Yeah, that was a total setup.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 1987. So he was way before when I was there, because I was in graduate school. He went to Stanford Law School. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to dig in. Somebody must know him.
Yeah.
Anyway, because you said like anyone who went to Stanford knows Thiel, and I'm like, I don't know Thiel. I don't know anyone who knows Thiel. Now I'm looking at him like, I probably know someone who knows him.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and this is where that like degrees of separation comes up.
Yes.
If somebody is in tech and or VC and went to Stanford, those are like my 3 qualifiers of that person has probably met Thiel at some point.
I have to say, in my defense, I was absolutely a social reject in that environment for obvious reasons. And like my husband, who's from Texas, we basically got married because we were just like, oh my God, like what's going on here? And he's just like, I don't know, like, you want to go somewhere? You want to go out? Like, sure. Like, but I mean, I remember there was one guy who's very cute. I wanted to go out with him. I was like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And he's like, what do you mean? It's a Wednesday. I'm like, well, let's just go out. He's like, oh, I never go out during the week. And I was like, aren't we done? Like, we're in graduate school. Don't we get to just fuck off? Like, do we even need to get good grades anymore? I was very wrong about that, by the way. Like, you are supposed to get good grades. They look at your grades. And but it was culturally a totally different world from what I was used to. But anyway, I didn't know him. But I'll investigate. But I really don't know that many people from that era, so I don't know who I would even begin to ask. But okay, so he so I felt like his entree was the philosophy stuff, and they must have thought he was so smart that he could handle it. That's what I think happens. They
Yeah.
just they tap someone who's smart and who's willing to do it. And maybe they give you those. Maybe the tests that you take help. Like, do you think that testing LSATs and all the tests you take when you're coming up in school and everything? Did you have you ever run anything across anything that says that that kind of testing is used as part of their data sets? I believe the Marines one, like I believe the JD Vance one, and the guy who MK Ultra, Uncle Ted, got a Congressional Medal of Honor for
Yep.
writing. I think it's Henry Murray for writing the assessment of men,
Mm-hmm.
which was used at the military. But did you ever come across any of that kind of thing in any other
So
sphere?
I've heard rumblings of like the old gate testing program that they used to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard of that. Yes.
Like things like the ACT. Like the ACT is owned by a private company. I can't remember who it is. But they basically run the tests on behalf of the government for, entry into like private institutions and academies and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have things like the ASVAB, LSAT, like you said. And I do think that they take all of these things into context, as well as, like social
Yes.
circles and things like that.
No, you know what they're doing now? It's been a long time since I've applied for a real job, but so it wasn't happening when I did it. But they do these tests where you take a test to get a job,
Mm-hmm.
and like it gives you numbers, it gives you like dominant personality
Mm-hmm.
trait, and then like you're almost like you're Leo with Virgo rising or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it gives you a dominant and then a secondary,
Mm-hmm.
and they really use that. I've
Yeah.
known lots of people. Maybe everybody has to do it now.
Like
Uh,
the Meyer-Briggs stuff.
they've taken it to a whole nother level. Like there are private organizations, and the first time I encountered it was somebody was applying. A friend of mine was applying for a VC firm,
Mm-hmm.
venture capital, and I thought they care about they're giving you a psych test.
Yeah.
Gave him a psych test,
That's
and of course, he passed. But he was just a very like, why are you doing this for the money? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about politics? Not very much. Like it was
Yep.
very plain vanilla, and I was like, you're definitely getting that job.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I do think that they sort of seek those people out, and I think that, I've seen the way that Peter Thiel like handles himself on camera, very unbecoming, very sweaty, and I think that's why he's not Elon Musk right now.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, like they needed somebody that could interact with the public and could be marketable and like
Yeah.
charismatic,
Trump.
and yeah,
Trump was trained by Zucker on The Apprentice.
exactly, and even before that, Roy Cohn.
Zelensky. Yeah, that's true. But
Yeah.
Zelensky, his backstory.
Yep, the good president, the actor.
Really,
Yep.
how obvious can you be? Now that he's suspended democracy and kills political enemies, are people like, oh, that was fake?
Yeah. Yeah, it is strange, especially because like we're seeing more and more like Andrew Tate's talking about running for office, and other celebrities are
That's what I
talking
was
about it.
thinking.
Mhm.
So, what if they really want a Nazi? What if the next thing is like Trump is just not, because Trump's not really a Nazi, right?
Right.
Like what if they really want a Nazi? What if that's what we're going to get?
I could definitely see it. I mean, when I look at like have you heard of the California doom loop?
Mm-mm.
So California obviously has been in like a downward spiral of just getting worse, as far as like their economy and the way that like the city is. Like there's so much artificially created like homelessness, and immigration and stuff that goes on there. And Newsom is basically like a long-term Joe Biden for the state, where Joe Biden got in, he's like incoherent and like shitting himself and things, and it's like make him so unappealable that people will clamor for anything, including Donald Trump 2.0 and the New World Order and digital dystopia, and essentially you have like technocrats, like Peter Thiel and like Gary Tan, Mark Andreessen. They're teaming up with people like Michael Schellenberger, to say like, New York has all these problems, we need to have like a technocratic solution to it. They have this whole like ideology of like the grays and the browns, where they want to put like the private enforcers for the technocratic regime of California or the grays, and they'll dress normal people in brown to like create this divide and basically create like an impromptu Gestapo there.
Well,
That's
they're
like their
bringing a
goal.
communist in.
Yeah.
What's the cure for communism? Fascism, right?
Exactly. And it's actually kind of funny because like when you look at the technocratic system, it is essentially like a fascistic system that has a lot in common with communism, where it's like the state owns all the companies because they have contracts with them, what have you, and they rule fascistically but also own everything and run everything.
I'm looking at something called police1.com. I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
a resource for, I've never heard of it before, but the headline is what California's doom loop means for police agencies everywhere.
Yep.
It says public safety leaders can use California's experience and emerging technologies to avoid a downward spiral of cuts, crime, and community decline. So when they did the defund the police, my first thought was, oh, they just want a national police force, which
Yeah.
they have, I'm sure, a lot more funding and interoperability now than they ever had before. Although they always had it. That Sheriff Israel from Parkland was part of the International Brotherhood of Police. Like, it's
Yep.
like the mayors. It's like, dude, it's the globalism from the bottom up. Very annoying.
Yep.
But it says, so it says budget cuts are linked to public safety decline, defund the police impact still felt. And then it says emerging tech can offset staffing shortfalls. AI, drones, and digital evidence management tools are helping some agencies maintain operational efficiency despite budget and personnel limits. But they're using that to, California as the incubator. And also San Francisco is basically a giant slum right now,
Yep.
which there's no reason for it. The amount of money that flows through that place, unbelievable. It's obvious. It's what I call the Cowboy Stadium strategy. Mm-hmm. So I only went to, well, now I've been to two, but I went to one football game my entire life. It was at Cowboy Stadium and before Jonestown, which is like the new big giant Cowboy Stadium. And he was trying to get funding for the new one, but everybody liked it. Everybody liked the Cowboy Stadium. So he stopped painting it. Shit was chipping. It was very long lines to get a beer. And I remember saying to my husband, it's like, why doesn't he just paint it and like hire more people to sell beer? He's like, I don't know. We just need a new stadium. I'm like,
yep.
No, you don't. And that's what they're doing in San Francisco. I think they just want to make it all like fully 15-minute, all the fucking little robots. Nobody wants to go out their house. Have you been to San Francisco?
I haven't.
Oh, the robots are like the little smiley face robot boxes are all over the sidewalk. Like nobody notices them already. And they're delivering food. Yeah.
That I mean that's pretty on par, and it's like they are using the Hegelian dialectic that they all like learn in school and in these circles and stuff from philosophers like Peter Thiel, to basically get the public to consent to these things. And they're like, look, whatever will get me out of the right now, but they don't realize that the right now was manufactured by the people that are selling them the solution.
Yeah. So, and it is funny because like you'll stand at a traffic light waiting with one of these little robots. And I'm just, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them like hum. Like, pass the time, like they're really super humanized. So what then, let's continue with what you think people should focus on. Like what's your suggestion for a better focus or a response to this that, if not making the change, would at least preserve our dignity?
Yeah. So I've gotten called like a black pillar and doomerist and things like that. But I'm basically at the point now where I've interacted with enough people, at least online. In person in public seems to be a lot better of an experience, but online especially. That I don't think there is going to be like some mass awakening where everyone's just like there's this shoe drop moment and everyone's like, all right, let's overthrow the world government, right?
It would be hijacked anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like any sort of collective movement that you get is always subject to like subterfuge, infiltration, what have you. I mean, they're spying on everybody all the time on everything that everyone's talking about. If you really want to like try to do that, you're gonna have to be like passing handwritten notes to each other physically in person.
Right.
Yeah,
People
and
can't write
exactly. Eh,
or read cursive.
probably on purpose.
Yeah.
And so all I can really do is like advocate for people to like basically, be responsible for their own personal exodus out of these systems. And that comes with, obviously I'm the one selling to people. You have to sacrifice the conveniences and the luxuries that are posited to you by these companies. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to, cut down on your availability or your connectedness or whatever that looks like. Doing the constant research, like, DARPA and like contractors like Booz Allen Hamilton and the Rand Corporation and even like MIT, Stanford, all these things, they release the white papers on their tech all the time. And what they're trying to do is basically sell the tech to investors. So they're not lying about the tech. There's actual money going into it, and some of the things that we're talking about today, like that, they were started and funded 20 years ago. So if you do want to be ahead of the curve, follow the tech, follow these white papers, see them, and as you're reading them, this is a good rule of thumb for me. Imagine the worst possible application for that technology, and realize that over time, when mixed with government, that will be the eventuality. And
Okay.
that, yeah, it's
Thanks,
again,
thanks, bro.
yeah, no,
nice,
and
nice talking to you.
like I do get that black pill and that doomerism and stuff, but it is the point where it's like everyone has to, take their own personal responsibility and accountability and try to find ways to navigate outside of these systems or find ways to avoid them, boycott them, and resist them by any means.
So I think that the black pill thing, I get so as soon as the Pope was announced, American Pope, I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I do not want that attention here. The psyop is here.
Yeah.
It's schismatic. He says shit that's wrong. He tweets. I don't want a guy who tweets. So all that stuff's bad. And I immediately just looked at his last two tweets or whatever. I was like, no.
Yeah.
And someone predictably, and I didn't want to do it. I gave it like a minute. I was like, and I mean that literally, not like I haven't seen you in a minute. Like I gave it a minute.
Yeah.
But anytime I give the benefit of the doubt for more than like it takes me to actually assess, I'm wrong. And then people are like, oh, what are you talking to that guy for? I'm like, I don't know. I just gave him a minute. Like, so this guy immediately like, this is ridiculous. And somebody yelled at me, and I said, look, I'm not a black pill. This is not a black pill. What it is if you keep putting hope in institutions and the people who run them, you're a fool. You're making the same mistake over and over and over again. Yeah. There's no black pill. It's a sin. It's actually a sin. I'm a practicing Catholic. It's a sin to have no hope. That's an actual fact. You cannot have no hope. And I have hope, but beware of false hope. The hope does not lie in institutions that are highly controlled. Ron Paul, maybe he's got a little touch of the limited hangout. I don't know, but he's not gotten to be president. He is too far in our camp to be president. It's not happening. If it were, he'd be killed immediately. There's no hope in institutions that have been captured. None. So there may be hope in the fact that their shit might not actually work because human beings have souls. There might be a solar flare. You know what I mean? There might be something that brings their stuff down. They aren't actual gods. They don't really know that. I don't think that we're organizing a resistance anytime in the near future because not enough people realize it. And Uncle Ted was like, pretty soon there's going to be too much tech. And it's like, oh, when did he write that? Oh, shit. So there's that. However, I think there are a couple of things that you can do if you do believe in that a human being is not an animal. Mm-hmm. You can save your soul. You can model that for your kids. And we see like the next generation, lots of my nephews and stuff are And even my niece, my kids, like they went through a phase, and now they're like, oh, it's bullshit, and it's
Mhm.
good to be good, and all of that. And you can also have, you can call them taboos, or you can have them moral strictures or whatever, like my Palantir thing, which makes me sick because it would have been just so much money. And I really was like, oh, I'm buying this. And I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't, you know?
That speaks to
So,
your character, though.
oh,
You know.
but it's hurts so much. Like
Oh
that,
yeah.
maybe it's a better testament to my character, how sick it makes me. But I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. But
Yeah.
still, like, I just don't like looking at it. So, but you have, but there are things that you can consider taboo. Like when I go to the airport, I won't let them do my picture.
Yeah.
I entered the country accidentally without my passport. I just like walked through and I was like, what up? And they're like, oh no, we got it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Insane.
But, yeah, but if they ask me, I say no, and then they laugh at me, and I'm like, hey, use it or lose it. Is it all
Yep.
right or not? I'm just exercising it. So in case it ever comes in handy. Like, I trust you, man in uniform, but
Yeah.
the next guy might be a Republican. I don't know. So you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like so stupid. Anyway, so we can have taboos, and we can
Yeah.
have like everybody needs to like grow potatoes. And yes, it's going to be two different tiers of people. There's
Yeah.
going to be two different tiers of people. Like there's going to be the people who embrace it, and they're going to be the fringe people who don't. But you can, I mean, just having a backyard is enough to
Yeah.
be able to grow a potato or a chicken, and that's very empowering, I think.
Yeah.
But what other, I mean, does that sound right to you, or is that a black pill in itself? Like, oh shit, I got to grow my own chickens. Like, I went to college.
No, I mean, I think you're right on the money because, you know, I do think that there is merit in placing hope in yourself. And I think that they have set up society to convince everyone that they are way less powerful and capable than they truly are. And even conditioning them to be that way. But like you were saying, like passing that knowledge on to future generations, like trying to make yourself as self-sufficient, self-sustaining as possible, like learning new skills, all these things that were sort of deprived from us through like you know, them outsourcing what I would consider like child rearing to the state through like public education and like we didn't get taught how to farm and how to like build things. It was just memorize.
I must interject. I just had this thought today. I was like, no one ever taught me how to be a good mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom was, I was the youngest of 9. And when she was like, things have changed. Like they really, really change. And and I was also taught that like a mom was kind of a side gig.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like cook or clean, you know what I mean? Like it's just gets zero credit at all. So you should, a friend of mine said, giving a woman an education is like pouring water into a shoe. You either the water runs out or you ruin the shoe.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. But the fact is they tell you have to get an education, and then you have to be, nobody, you have to go out and like, kill the antelope, but there's nobody home keeping the cave clean.
Right.
There's nobody making sure nobody breaks into the cave. I've never been broken into ever because I did ultimately stay home because my oldest son has Down syndrome, and it was not really possible to go back to work. But then I started doing this because I still thought it's not valuable to do that, but it's the only thing that's valuable. Yeah. It's the same. You're killing antelope. I'm keeping the cave clean. It's the same as it ever was. Like, you have to recognize, though, somebody has to do both of those jobs. And it's the mom at home who models those values and creates loyalty and a network that you can really count on. Just even siblings, like it's enough. You can have an extended family. That's great. But that nuclear family, I know that's like a 50s invention, but it really can offer a lot of support. But you got to focus on it. You have to realize that it has a value, and a dad needs to understand how much value he has in stabilizing the psyche and the family. So I think there's a lot that we can do, and they keep us really distracted.
Absolutely. And we could go back and like look at all of the atrocities through history, but the fact still stands that like the nuclear family structure has gotten us through thousands of years of history, and we're still here. So
and religion gets a terrible, like I like the Catholic thing because, as my mother said, it's a better way to live. But it's a better way to live. You got the Pascal's wager thing working, but it's just like the Bill of Rights. It's got very clear interpretation of the rules, very clear expectations of what you positively have to do, what you're not allowed to do. My mother would always say, it's just the 10 commandments, follow the 10 commandments, which is true.
Yeah.
But I really think having a common, very well defined morality is absolutely critical for a nation state, I'm going to say, or a community or whatever. And I've heard you quote like something like, maybe you never heard this one, but Christopher Dawson, I think were you talking about Tragedy and Hope? Somebody was talking about it. Christopher Dawson and George MacArthur both said the same thing. I've been to a lot of countries. The ones that do not have a common religion are in decline. And I think Oswald Spengler said it about architecture.
Yeah.
If you have eclectic architecture, you can be sure you are a society in decline. Oh, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot that we can do as self-respecting human beings. I think that is the antidote to this stuff. At least if there is a soul, you get to save it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at like the personal choices I've made is like, get away from the grocery stores, stop buying stuff that's owned by Unilever, BlackRock. There is a very real like observable effect that like your diet and stuff have, and like that's one thing that I think everybody could do is find a local farmer or somebody that produces food that isn't part of this like giant food paradigm, and that's one step. And then another step is try to facilitate like bartering physical goods with like physical commodities and reward people that go along with it, because then you end up fostering like the incentive to do it again, and create this sort of, whether it's a community wide or even just like a personal network wide thing where there's no digital ledger of your transactions, whether it's like Venmoing somebody or sending them crypto. And while I don't think there will be like a all at once mass awakening by people like consciously doing that and being willing to like sacrifice the conveniences and stuff, like they all become drops in the bucket, and with enough drops we add up to an ocean, and that removes their power, because like everything in the world is a market and requires participation to be successful. If none of us opt in, none of it succeeds. Now,
I love you gave me a really practical tidbit there. There's a market down the street that somebody told me, they have great produce. It's just a little hole in the wall, like run down. But I never go there because I always have like other things I have to buy. Yeah. But I'm going to start going there now. I'm sure they get it from, California's got nothing but food. Like I'm sure they just getting it. Yeah. Like, so I'm just going to start going there and then it'll exist. And it was one of the only things that stayed open after the fire. A lot of things, just closed down. There isn't enough business. So I should try to keep them up. So that's great. I just need one little, I can only probably do one thing at a time anyway. So I only need
small
one. Yeah. But that's a great one because I really can't grow it all. Mm-hmm. And that's how you think you have to do it. But that's not a bad idea. So, gosh, we went all over the place. I think I probably shouldn't have had that second espresso, but you've been very patient. Very patient with my interrupting. So next time, if you'll come back, I want to talk about the biodigital convergence. What do you call it?
Biodigital convergence. I've seen it called a bunch of different things. There's like Internet of Bodies, Internet of Bio Nano Things, which is that IOB and T. I've heard Wireless Body Area Network, which is WBAN. And that starts getting into like microsensors and nanotechnology, whether or not it's included in certain vaccines or not, that right. I think is up for debate, but
probably not, so that it can be disproven.
Yeah.
And then they just give it to you later.
Well, too, like, when I mention nanotech, a lot of people just think nanobots, but nanotech also includes like things like viruses and stuff like that. Like anything that is at the nano scale is considered nanotechnology to them. So that, I'm just using their terminology because things like gene therapy that would be considered like a form of nanotech. Like mRNA itself is nanotech because it is injecting messenger RNA into the body and then changing you on a nanoscale.
I did during that time, people were asking for religious arguments, which really wasn't smart to make a specific argument, but I formulated them. And I wouldn't do like it's made of aborted fetuses because I felt like they were probably going to be able to skirt that by saying other ones aren't, blah, blah, blah. But there is there was an encyclical or something from the cardinals that said gene therapy is only permitted if you have such a bad disease that you can compromise your bodily integrity to fight it.
Yeah.
And that's not what a vaccine is.
Right.
So it's immoral. Like it's immoral to go mess around with that stuff.
I honestly think there's a dangerous conversation that I saw sort of with it was some guy with Peter Thiel, and he seemed to attempt to posit that like the saving of your soul and you know giving to Christ and transcending into heaven were forms of transhumanism to try to normalize it within the Christian ideology.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have heard Ian Davis was telling me like because it bugs the shit out of me that JD Vance converted to Catholicism. I'm like, what manner of fuckery is this? Like, yikes. And I told him what I tell anyone who's listened to my show knows like this one tidbit I discovered, which was Adrian Vermeule, who co-wrote Conspiracy Theories with Cass Sunstein, is the Harvard professor who's spearheading Catholic integralism. So the guy who invented cognitive infiltration is the head of the Christian nationalist stuff.
Wild.
I know. I'm like, okay, get it? Like you're being had.
Yeah.
So I really am very much looking forward to having another conversation with you if you're down.
Yeah, anytime.
All right. So tell people what you want them to know, and we're going to end, and then I'm going to make sure your recording uploaded, so don't just disappear. But tell people what you want them to know.
Absolutely. I would say, you know, always vet and question everything for yourself. Politics, in my opinion, is not real. There is no politician, no public figure that is promising to save you actually has that agenda in mind. Go talk to your local farmers. They're very nice people. They work really hard, and most of them hate Bill Gates and Monsanto. So you'll probably be in good company. And, you know, just have faith in the self. So even if, you know, everything around you looks doom and gloom, like you are capable of incredible things as not only like a person, but, you know, just biologically, and never sell yourself short because of the things that society ingrains in you, or if things look, you know, lost, be the person to create your own hope, you know, be that example that people can look to.
That's awesome. I'm very inspired by that. And you're so young. I feel like you have a lot of wisdom for a young guy. So.
That comes from having to learn everything the hard way.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Good. So suffering can be good.
Oh, yeah.
We try to insulate us from the suffering, but no possibility. So that was super awesome. Very interesting. Thank you so much for joining me. People can find, I would say the best place to become familiar with your work and your, Twitter. is Twitter at 7, the number SEES _
Yes.
And then you've got a link tree in there, I think.
Oh yeah. Linktree, it goes to Sequoia Capital's YouTube. It goes to Peter Thiel's Rumble.
Does it really?
Yep.
That's hilarious. I love that. That's so funny. All right. Well, that's awesome. We will hopefully do this again really soon because I feel like it's a part 2. I really want to hear about that Biodigital Convergence. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. This is Monica Perez.